The woods, ancient, mysterious places steeped in myths, folklore, and legends of old. But some of these forests, in their darkest depths, are hiding things far stranger than any myth. From a creepy figure with a hook for a hand, to nuclear weapons abandoned amid the trees, let's get our walking boots on and investigate some of the strangest things ever found in the woods. Mysterious mask. One day back in 2014, Reddit user Sanka was hunting for fossils in the woods near St. Thomas University in Minneapolis. There'd been a thunderstorm the night before, so he was hoping that the flood of water had churned up some fossils from the bottom of a stream nearby. When he headed over to look though, he saw something far, far stranger. A face was peering up at him through the mud. Though shocked at first, Sanka realized it was just a mask and dug it out. But it was still very weird. The mask was made from metal and looked like some kind of ritualistic or tribal piece. What was it doing in a stream in his local woods? And who owned it? Sanka didn't want to stick around to find out and headed back home with the mysterious item to investigate further. Once home, he sent it off to the Science Museum of Minnesota for analysis. The results were interesting. It turns out that despite looking ancient, the mask was made of copper along with magnesium and aluminum. Now, those last two aren't naturally occurring metals, so the mask was likely cast from some copper alloy scrap metal in the mid-20th century. However, it also had fragile wax along one edge. That wax wouldn't have survived long in a woodland ravine, so it was probably left there only 1 or 2 days before Sanka found it. Creepy. Now, it could just be some college student's art project, sure, but that doesn't explain why it was left in the middle of the woods. I can't help but think something much weirder was going on. Was the mask left behind by a forgetful cultist after some kind of ritual? It's difficult to say. Awe in the Amazon. While wandering in a wooded area of undergrowth over on Maranhão Island, Brazil, back in February 2019, local fishermen noticed something incredibly peculiar. It was absolutely huge, it smelled awful, and it looked like some kind of creature? Experts were called to the scene and they were even more shocked and confused. That's because they identified it as a 26-foot-long humpback whale. Now, I'm no genius, but even I know whales don't live in forests. And the sea was 50 feet away from where it was found, which, considering the dead animal weighed a whopping 11 tons, posed one gargantuan question. How the heck did it get there? There were no physical signs of injury, and the idea of a normal ocean wave being strong enough to throw an entire whale 50 feet through the air just wasn't feasible. What's more, humpback whales are never usually seen on the north coast of Brazil in February. It's miles from their natural habitat. Okay, I'm stumped. Thankfully though, research group Bicho de Agua think they've got the answer. The whale, despite its size, was only a calf and had probably been separated from its mother, got lost, and sadly perished from starvation somewhere nearby. Then the tide, which rises a towering 13 feet high in winter, flooded into the forest and brought the poor whale with it. Now usually an 11-ton whale wouldn't have the buoyancy to be swept so far inland. However, because it died out at sea, it would have been decomposing, and when bodies decompose, they produce gases which inflate them. Guess what? Things that are inflated float better. Thus, the decomposing inflated whale was washed ashore with far greater ease than it would have been otherwise. Damn, that sounds like anything other than a whale of a time. Sword in the tree. Forget King Arthur and the Sword in the Stone, because there's a new kid on the block. Reddit user codenamed Skythy stumbled across a sword in a tree while metal detecting in Epping Forest near London, UK. Well, it was a sword stood upright against a tree anyway. The weapon looked ancient, and the letters KSF were engraved on the hilt. Wasting no time, Skythy snapped some pics of the sword and turned to the internet for help. Sure enough, someone knew exactly what the letters meant. They stand for Knights of Sherwood Forest. Yep, that's the same Sherwood Forest that the legendary outlaw Robin Hood lived in. Who were these knights then? Brave men on noble steeds working tirelessly for justice? Well, not quite. The Knights of Sherwood Forest was a secret fraternal organization formed in 1879 in Missouri, US, that had branches around the world. They weren't actually knights, just dudes who liked being referred to as such. Super cool guys then, definitely. Not much is actually known about the Knights of Sherwood Forest because its members were very secretive, and by 1920 the organization was all but extinct. However, it was associated with the more successful Foresters of America. So, like the Foresters, the so-called Knights would have received various social and financial benefits from being in the fraternity. As for the sword itself, it was probably just ceremonial and unlikely to have actually been used in combat. Real combat, that is. I just know they ran around pretending to be Robin Hood and fighting each other. I mean, who wouldn't? The many missing. Hiking alone in the woods can be a tranquil, meditative experience. However, it can also be absolutely terrifying. The latter was true for Dateline 420, a YouTuber who back in 2016 went trekking through New York's Berkeley-Jackson County Park. As he was walking down a trail, he noticed some white sheets of paper taped to the trees a little way ahead. Assuming they were just no trespassing signs, he walked over and felt the hairs on the back of his neck prickle. They weren't no trespassing signs. They were missing persons posters, and every single one of them was different.
My God, this is a dude. It's a dude, 26. Last seen August 5th. There's no year. LAPD.
There must have been at least 20 of them stuck throughout the area. These weren't fake posters either. They all showed real people who'd actually gone missing over the years. And to make it even creepier, there was some sort of makeshift camp just down the way from them, as if whoever had done this was staying right nearby. I'm sorry, but I'd have noped my way out of there as soon as I'd seen the first poster. Suddenly, Dateline heard voices and did just that before reporting the whole thing to the police. But the case was swiftly dismissed on the grounds that the whole thing was just a harmless setup for a Halloween party. I'd like to believe that, but using real posters is pretty bad taste for a bit of harmless fun. Aren't Halloween parties more about dressing up and playing the Ghostbusters theme on repeat? Whether it was the work of some deranged psychopath or not, we may never know. One thing's for sure though, at my Halloween parties, I'm sticking to busting ghosts and dance moves. UFO Land. 2020 was a weird year. Not only did it see the start of one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, but it also saw a strange spike in UFO sightings across the globe. In September of that year, somebody was walking through their local forest in Poland when they came across something they couldn't explain. A huge object lay on its side between the trees, covered in moss as if it had been there for some time. What the object actually was, though, was hard to say. However, as soon as the news hit the internet, it caused a frenzy among UFO fanatics. I mean, I can see why. It does look like some kind of rocket capsule. Even more intriguingly, the woodland surrounding it was far too dense for it to have been transported there by land, suggesting it did indeed fall from the sky. Skeptics were quick to point out that it looks like a navigation buoy you'd find in the ocean, and I can definitely see that. But what would a buoy be doing in the middle of the woods with no explanation for how it got there? Let's not jump straight to aliens. My guess is it was part of a weather balloon or a rocket test that crash landed into the forest. Having said that, I'm not really satisfied with any of those answers. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Beat up bunker. What would you do if you were strolling through the woods one day and came across a locked metal door in the ground? Me, I'd start strolling faster. But back in 2014, two friends in Northeast Germany's answer was, crowbar the door open and head inside. Okay. So that's what they did, and were immediately greeted with this lovely sight. Not scary at all. Somehow unperturbed, they continued down the hall, where it only got worse. The dark corridors twisted and branched off into different directions, and one just led to a grotty hole in the floor. Ugh. Then, as they pushed deeper into the bunker, creepy graffiti started appearing. Oh, how encouraging! Even further in, and the friends found themselves passing through sets of heavy metal doors, all blasted from their hinges. Then they saw some more graffiti, which translates to, "Hello Satan, I love you," which would be a heartwarming message if it wasn't addressed to the devil. Despite even this, they carried on, until they eventually hit a flooded room with a suspicious-looking machine inside. After realizing they couldn't push any deeper without getting soaked, they turned back, and incredibly managed to find their way out. Lucky. So if they hadn't accidentally stumbled across the other world from Silent Hill, what had they found? It's hard to be sure, but considering the bunkers in northeast Germany, it's likely to have been built during the Cold War. East Germany was allied to Communist Russia, while West Germany was allied to the capitalist US. Both sides worried about the possibility of nuclear war and built numerous underground bunkers to hide in if it ever happened. Most were nowhere near the size of this one though, suggesting it could have been some kind of government facility that's since been defaced by vandals. Satanist vandals, that is, which in my experience are the worst of all. One thing's for sure, there's no way in hell you'd catch me down there. Randor. Call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure doors are only good for a few specific things. Letting people in, letting people out, or in some cases, keeping people out. And Mabel, please stop calling me. I don't want to buy your Avon. So if I found one fixed between two trees in the middle of a wood, I'd be pretty confused. Yet that's exactly what Reddit user CPJ88 found in a desolate part of Pennsylvanian woodland back in 2015. Disturbingly, there were also some kind of bones just beside the oddly placed door. Of course, the internet jumped straight to the conclusion that the door is some kind of portal to another dimension. If so, I hope this girl's managed to find her way back. A portal seems unlikely though because, well, logic exists? While less exciting, the bones are probably fake or coincidental, and the door was maybe set up for a photo shoot or art installation. I mean, people do all kinds of things in the name of art, like meticulously inserting hundreds of coins into a fallen tree. Seriously, someone genuinely found that in a British forest. While it may look like an artist went rogue with a pocket full of pennies and a hammer, this is actually a wish tree. They can be found at remote beauty spots across the country, with thousands of tourists and day trippers traditionally pressing a penny into the tree as an offering before making a wish. Personally, I'm team random door, although I prefer to think it's not art at all and just the work of the laziest builder in the world. I asked for a house, Bob. A whole house? Lady in the Woods. If you ever find yourself in the tiny British village of Otterden in Kent, you wouldn't think that it hid a mystifying secret. Well, go to the edge of the village wood and you'll find this. It's a wooden carving of a faceless pregnant woman. And I can't lie, I'd probably jump a mile into the air if I wasn't expecting to see it. But this strange statue is renowned amongst the locals. Despite its renown, however, almost nothing is actually known about it. Indeed, the carving seems to have just sprung up one day without an explanation. Lots of theories about its origins have been touted over the years though. One is that it was sculpted by a soldier as a tribute to his wife after she lost her life in World War II. Another is that it's the work of a young carpentry student and only dates back to the 1970s. Whatever its origins, nobody has ever claimed ownership of the mysterious Lady in the Woods. And considering how much time and effort must have gone into its creation, that's pretty odd. Regardless, it's really carved a name out for itself. Tree creepers. It's safe to say people have found some pretty terrifying stuff in woods all over the world, and lots of them post what they've seen online. Creepy dolls seems to be a particularly common occurrence, like this one spotted by Reddit user Dan68. Somebody went out of their way to hang the creepiest doll they could find onto a tree, which a colony of wasps then made a nest around, turning the entire thing into pure nightmare fuel. Like I wasn't scared of wasps enough already. Another Redditor was wandering through their local woods and snapped a pic of an interesting looking hollowed tree. On examining the photo later though, they noticed, yep, that's another creepy doll. Or it's a very good albeit creepy Photoshop edit. Or an actual child? Ooh. I know it's probably just a prank, but it still gives me the shivers. Though I've gotta say, stumbling across this scarecrow would scare me a lot more. I know they don't suddenly come to life or anything, but someone put it there, and I wouldn't be sticking around to meet them. Even so, none of those things compare to what Holly Whizzle 311 found in her local woods. If you're wondering, that's some kind of animal spine that's been tied to a wooden cross. Jeez. Now I want to believe that somebody just cooked up an animal over a fire for food, but something doesn't quite add up. I mean, wouldn't the string be burnt if that was the case? And it's not burnt at all. Right. What do you think? Let me know in the comments because I'm going with super creepy back scratcher until I hear a better answer. Mystery missile. Sure, finding something creepy in the woods isn't exactly ideal, but you know what's worse? finding something that could explode in your face and plunge the world into nuclear Armageddon. Well, one dude from Baxter, Tennessee found just that while taking a walk back in 2019. After coming across a small clearing in the trees, the man was shocked to see what appeared to be a huge missile just laying there. He texted his sister about the discovery, and she immediately took to Reddit to ask what people thought, which turned up the even more worrying revelation that it wasn't just any missile. It was an Honest John. Developed in the US in the 1950s, these missiles were capable of carrying nuclear warheads. Had our guy come close to setting off an undetonated nuclear bomb? Thankfully, no. After some more sleuthing, it turns out there used to be a military high school in the area called the DeBerry Military Academy. In its heyday, the school had a plinth outside the building with, you guessed it, a replica of an Honest John missile. Sometime after the school closed then, the replica missile must have been dumped unceremoniously in the woods nearby. It's a shame. Missiles aren't fashionable, but that place really knew how to rock it. Buried bounty. When I was a kid, I used to go treasure hunting in my backyard, though the most I ever found was an old pack of chewing gum. However, when one man from the Netherlands went out metal detecting in his local woods back in 2016, he had substantially better luck than me. That's because after picking up a signal, he brushed some leaves from the ground and found this.
Whoa. Whoa, what the hell?
Whoa. Without even opening it, a legit treasure chest is already way better than anything I've ever found. But what was inside? Gold? Jewels? The skull of the owner's former enemy? Well, after pulling the box out, the man realized it was tightly padlocked. Then he found some writing on the back which explained it was actually a geocache. Essentially, geocaching is a form of organized treasure hunting. You download coordinates from the geocache website or app, and then follow said coordinates to find stashes hidden by other geocachers. So unfortunately for us, the Danish metal detector did the right thing and buried the chest again for an actual geocacher to find. Aw man, good people are really the worst, aren't they? The Witch's House. Deep in the heart of Horstved Wood in Djursland, Denmark, there once lay a small abandoned house. Its crumbling remains are surrounded by a murky lake, and getting to the site of the house itself means treacherously trekking around the waters. But if you're brave enough to do it, you'll be rewarded with, well, probably a pair of soiled underpants. A sign on the outside of the building calls it Flintholm, though it's known as the Witch's House by locals. And it's not hard to see why. Before it collapsed, the inside was even more rundown than the outside, with next to nothing left of whatever once resided there. While some believe it truly did belong to a witch, others say it was built by a farmer as a place to hide from German soldiers during World War II. The latter isn't far from the truth. It was actually built in the 1930s by one Peter Madsen Petersen, who also planted some of the forest surrounding it. Peter was sadly evicted by German soldiers during the war, and the house was laid abandoned ever since. There probably weren't any resident witches, but would you head into the woods to find out? I've seen far too many horror movies to think that's a good idea. Want to know what is a good idea though? Hitting those like and subscribe buttons. That way you'll never miss another of my amazing fact-based videos again. Now then, where were we? Woodland witchery. Witches are often thought of as purely fictional, but many people are strong believers in witchcraft, with many witches practicing their beliefs today, and apparently woods are one of their favorite places to do so. While walking through some woodland in coastal New Hampshire in the US, Redditor Wilderness Mafia 100 came across this somewhat unsettling structure, made from wood and animal bones. It looks like an altar of some kind, but as well as its obvious creepiness, it also has a big inverted pentacle at its centerpiece, which, if you believe in that sort of thing, isn't a good sign. I mean, the symbol was literally adopted by the San Franciscan Church of Satan. So devil worship? Some modern witchers dispute the evil symbolism, however, so let's hope Wilderness Mafia stumbled into one of their altars. Elsewhere, TikToker Lord Veer claimed to have seen a shrine of some sort appear one day in the woods around the back of his house. If that wasn't staged, then I'd be pretty tempted to move. I'm getting big Blair Witch energy. And over in Penns Woods, Pennsylvania, someone came across another oddity they reckon is evidence of witchcraft. After approaching a strange-looking log, they realized it had a removable lid. Inside, they found a stash of acorns with a knife plunged into the center of them. I agree, that's kinda ominous, but the vibes I'm getting are less witch and more murderous squirrel. The Hook Man. I hope you're not easily spooked, because what you're about to hear is the most unsettling story I've heard in a long time, and there's proof within the pictures. It happened back in 2014. Reddit user EmbaDMB and his friends were bored, so they decided to go out and explore an old abandoned quarry in the woods nearby. Yes, because that doesn't sound like the start of your average horror movie at all. Anyway, Emba and his friends were walking through the desolate area when they came to a steep ridge that sloped down to the base of the quarry. It looked dangerous, so they stopped at the edge, but then Emba noticed movement in the near distance, and when he squinted to get a better look, a chill ran up his spine. Standing below them a little way off was some sort of hooded figure dressed head to toe in black. The figure was standing over a rock, twitching and jerking erratically. And even stranger, it had some kind of hook where one of its arms should have been. Emba pointed it out to his friends, and they all stood transfixed for a moment. Luckily, the man, or whatever it was, hadn't seen them. Then they snapped out of it and got the hell out of there. But that wasn't the end, oh no. Later that night, another of Emba's friends got in touch with a strange story of her own to tell. Apparently, she'd been driving down the narrow lane beside the quarry when a man in a black coat had suddenly loomed up out of the darkness in the distance. He was standing in the middle of the road staring at something, but Emba's friend couldn't see what, so she'd stopped the car in front of him expecting him to move. He didn't. He just stayed there staring. Seriously freaked out by this point, she'd been forced to reverse all the way back up the lane and go a different route. So who or what was the frightful figure that friends had seen? And what it had been doing in the quarry all day and night? And I'm not getting any sleep tonight, that's for sure. I really wish that story hadn't hooked me in so much. Right, after that, I'm off to watch some baby panda videos or something. Which of those strange finds were you most interested by? And have you ever found something in the woods worthy of being in this video? Let me know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.